We sent our challenger player Hector into gold ELO with one singular mission: to win the game, nothing else. Please Hector, can you please just win this one time? He queues up for the game thinking, wow, am I really being paid for this? I could do this without a keyboard. But then, Hector's performance sadly caused his gold ELO teammates to turn on him, and were less than nice in the chat and ended up trolling the game, despite Hector trying his best, leading a challenger player to feel lost in low ELO. But why did this happen, and can Hector still carry the game? Well, let's listen into Hector's misery for the full picture as gold ELO tortures him for our own amusement.
No, please, God, no. No.
Not 30 seconds later, Hector's bot lane is dying to Seraphine and Zoe. Not exactly what you want to see, and Vi returns for an unwelcomed encore.
Vi? Bro, look at the wave. What do we do here? Huh? What is happening? This guy's coming at literally the worst times possible. He's probably getting mad at me because I'm not going in or something. I don't know.
So clearly, Hector is getting tilted by his teammates, but he's going to show us how a challenger really carries by tower diving Ornn. Okay, so he baits Ornn's abilities out. Then he begins diving the full health Ornn. Okay, he realizes he can't finish the kill, so Hector leaps out. Oh, Ornn whiffed his ult. Maybe Hector can...
Maybe it wasn't so dumb. Okay, maybe it was really dumb.
Yeah, okay. So not only is his team a bit on the rough side, but we have to watch a challenger get outplayed by a gold ELO Ornn. And if you want to catch all the highlights from this game, you can watch the full live video over at skillcapped right now. Thankfully, we don't have to watch that anymore as it's been a whole minute full of ridiculousness. Surely, the circus act is over. Hold that thought, Ryze is now stepping up to the plate at his shot at killing Ornn. Oh no. Well, there's no way Vi will mess this up too. I mean, at least she'll get a shutdown on the Ornn and turn things... oh god. I wouldn't be surprised if you're all nodding your heads in understanding, as that is how literally every single one of your solo games probably looks like, right? It's games like these which are all too common and make climbing ranked so frustrating and difficult. But believe it or not, with the right mindset and decision making, these games are easily winnable, which we're about to prove to you as we watch our challenger player navigate his way out of this situation to then hard carry his team. And don't worry, for those of you who don't know who Hector is, he's been challenger every season despite his hands aging like milk. So any guide we make with him is guaranteed to be replicable with the right decision making. No mechanics required, guaranteed. Throughout this guide, we'll be asking you, the viewer, what you would do at each key situation to test your skill and see if you're able to make the right choices to climb out of ELO hell. Yes, even when your Ryze begins proxy farming your waves because he's tilting and wants to FF. Nope, not even Ryze's clear trolling is going to matter with good decision making. So, to make the best choices when you're behind and or your team is trolling, you need to understand two very important things. The first is that the outcome of the game is now technically out of your control. People always want to hear that there's some secret tactic that will help them every time when they're losing. Well, there isn't. All you can really do is what's offered to you, either by your own team or your enemies. You don't get to decide how you come back, you just take what's presented to you, and hope you can make something work with what you can get. And secondly, you need to avoid fighting fair encounters with your opponents. When you're behind, everyone always tries to play the same way as if it's somehow going to work, going to every dragon fight, fighting fair 1v1s and 2v2s and so on. Instead, you should try and complicate the game for your opponents as much as you can. You almost want to be testing them to see if they actually know how to close out a game. To put it simply, instead of giving them simple questions like, do you know how to win a 5v5 dragon fight with your lead, you should instead aim to make your in-game questions hard on your opponents. An example of a hard question would be, you may be starting Baron, but I just ditched the objective and I'm pushing your inhibitor tower instead. What are you going to do about it? Basically, a hard question is putting your opponents in any situation where they have to respond super well in order to come out ahead. Now, this may sound weird and complicated at first, but we're going to be showing you a real in-game example of what we mean later on. For now, let's get right back to the moment where we left off. As we mentioned, Ryze was clearly upset by what was going on and was calling to forfeit, and even moved up top to proxy Hector's incoming waves. This really sucks, and you've all experienced trolls in your own games. There's literally nothing you can do to prevent your teammates from trolling you. However, you can choose how to respond to the situation. So, let's say you're Jax here. What would you do to try and salvage the game? Here's that crazy challenger insight you're looking for. You just go mid. There's nothing to farm top, so you just take Ryze's lane instead. Like we said, the situation is out of Hector's control, so he'll just take what he can get. Now, this unfortunately isn't going to result in some free farming like Hector had hoped. Graves, Zoe, and even Lucian have made their way here to siege the tower. So here's another easy question. Do you think that Jax can stay here and continue defending the tower? Obviously not, right? He's a low health melee champion against 3 ranged characters. Okay, but be genuinely honest and raise your hands. How many of you would just idle around and just watch the tower die because you felt like you shouldn't leave? Yeah, every time we witness a situation like this in low elo, most players just sit there and do nothing. When you're looking at things through an outside perspective, like in this guide, it's easy to say that you should just leave. But actually being in the game, players tend to get really upset that they're losing and that they have no control over what's happening. This then leads them to wasting time and being inefficient when they could have just done something else.
So when stuff like this is happening, I mean, you can't do anything, right? Like, what am I gonna do? Like, the entire game is collapsing on us, right? Like, am I supposed to, like, have some secret macro strategy to, like, fix this? No, like, you just have to go farm. Like, okay, I can't do anything there. I'll just go get bot lane wave, you know?
It really is that simple, and this was a really important choice that he made. Although his team lost the mid tower and some damage on the tier 2, Hector was able to achieve a massive power spike by completing his call, farming those bot lane waves, which is going to bring us to the next critical point in this game. As Hector is pushing down bottom, let's do a quick pause as he presses tab. If you are in the game, how strong do you think you are, relative to everyone on the enemy team? Can you 1v1 anyone? Take a moment to think about your own strength, and then we'll hear Hector's current thoughts.
I think I can 1v1 anyone as long as they're fairly away from their towers. They might think that I can't, which will bait them into fighting me. Like, Graves might think he's stronger than me, right? So he might take a full-on fight with me. And that might put me back into the game.
Let's actually take a moment to dive a bit deeper into what he just said here, as this is something you can truly abuse in your own games. Gold players have a tendency to look at KDA as the only metric for how strong someone is way too often, which is really dumb. To be honest with you, this is actually where the O10 Yasuo power spike meme comes from. If you really think about it, by the time a Yasuo has died 10 times, he'll probably have 2 to 3 items just from the farm alone. That's a massive power spike, as any Yasuo player knows. So what ends up happening is that players underestimate the supposedly weak Yasuo, they take a bad engage into him, and he just slices them up for 3 or 4 auto attacks with his 100% crit chance. And so, looking back at Hector's current power level, he's a level 11 Jax with a completed item. Most top lane champions are absurdly strong duelists at this point in the game. Champions like Nasus, Camille, Fiora, Renekton, etc. Top laners can 1v1 almost anyone else on the map with this type of spike, even if they're a bit behind. So Hector is likely the only player on the map who knows how strong he really is at this moment. And to really make the most out of this power spike, all he has to do is keep track of where everyone is, and hopefully he'll find a 1v1 he can win.
I see where a lot of the enemy team is, so no need to be afraid. So only Graves could be down here right now, and Lucian is just now spawning. Okay, it's only Lucian. I'm pretty sure I can just dive Lucian if he's here alone.
With perfect knowledge of what he should expect, Hector is well prepared for what happens next. And do you remember what he said earlier about how his opponents may underestimate him? Well, his prediction came true, and that's exactly what happens here. This Lucian would never dash in like this unless he really thought Jax was weak, which, as we know, he definitely isn't. This type of false confidence is incredibly common in low elo, where people don't actually understand power spikes, and Hector makes very good use of this opportunity handed to him. So he just runs Lucian down for a free kill. As you can see, with some really basic decisions, Hector's already back in the game and well prepared to carry. But despite that throw by Lucian, Hector's team is still very far behind the curve. Sure, he himself is strong, but that doesn't mean they are ready to 5v5 just yet. Before we see what he does next, you should know the full live game with Hector's commentary is over at skillcapped for you to watch right now. On top of that, Hector spent a ton of time working with us on a special top lane course that goes over all of the best strategies you can implement to carry a losing team as a top laner all the way up to Diamond. So check us out after this, as we have a special discount link in the description below. But for now, let's hear what Hector does next to carry his team after killing Lucian.
Okay, so we should not fight Dragon. We can maybe pick off the Zoe, but we should not fight Dragon. Oh, I think I canceled. Oh, actually, they're pretty disjointed. One of them's on Dragon, I'm pretty sure. Oh, he's not. What were they doing then?
These kinds of plays are precisely why a lot of games are easy to come back from in low elo. There are just a few things we need to break down. For starters, Hector's initial call was to not fight Dragon. Let's think back to that idea of not fighting fair. That's precisely what he wants to avoid here. Fighting over dragons or rift heralds is precisely how so many potential comebacks are thrown out the window. This is because even low elo players will be able to execute basic team fighting when they're all grouped up and coordinated at an objective. Team fighting at its core is actually pretty easy. Tanky characters in front, carries in the back, then just throw your spells at the other team. So when you're the team behind in gold, don't hand your opponents a super simple team fight on fair terms. Of course they'll be able to win it. But you can definitely take advantage of everything that leads up to that fair 5v5 fight. Low elo players are terrible at doing anything that requires patience and coordination. The Zoe was warding on her own without any of her teammates beside her to keep her safe. Then, Ornn joins the fight to try and save her to salvage the play. And as a challenger player, you can tell Hector immediately thought something was up. The only reason they would fight like that is to ensure that one or two of their teammates could take the dragon before Hector's team could arrive to contest it. But that wasn't the case, leading to this confusion. What were they doing then? Well, guess what? It's these kinds of moments you need to be on the lookout for in low elo. Fighting on your opponent's terms and getting annihilated is the fast way to just lose games. Instead, you should wait for the inevitable mistakes that low elo players make in their coordination. These types of blunders are guaranteed in diamond and below, and so you should just play patiently and wait for your moment to strike. And the best part about this is that you don't have to just wait for mistakes. You can actually try to be proactive and force big errors from your opponents by not playing a standard and fair game. As we always say, you're not up against a group of macro geniuses like TSM, of course. You're instead up against Timmy, Tammy, Jimmy, and Sammy. Stop expecting your opponents to play insane League of Legends and abuse the fact that you can probably bait them into making silly mistakes. For example, take a look at this game-winning play by Hector right after the dragon encounter.
So they're moving in to take our blue. I can't really stop this, I think. But I can maybe bait them to waste time. And get the wave at the same time. It's very hard for them to push. So I'm just proxying my own wave, or like our own wave here. They can't push. This makes them like, look how like uncoordinated they're starting to look, right? And now all my entire team is collapsing. And now we pop Ghost, and we run a Graves. Okay, now we just run a Seraphine. Look how uncoordinated they are. That was a terrible, terrible play.
To really break down what Hector is doing here, as a top laner, remember that you're very often playing self-sufficient mobile champions. And top laners are really good at doing what we talked about at the start, with asking their opponents tough questions. The simple move here, as Jax, would be to just back off and concede the area. But Hector wants to complicate the game against these inexperienced players. Do they know what to do when Jax proxies their wave? How do they get out of here together? Should they fight and stand their ground, etc.? These are exactly the type of uncomfortable situations you need to put your opponents in, as it's guaranteed to make them throw their leads. The answer to Hector's question was to realize that their wave just got stolen, and so they can't push anymore, and to just get out as safely as possible. But to do that though, they'd all have to move as one cohesive unit and then bulldoze their way down here through Hector, who couldn't stop them on his own. But again, that will require them to all be on the same page and to not freak out, which is very improbable for gold players. And that right there was the game-deciding play, which put Hector and all of his team decisively in the lead. After multiple throws from the enemy team, Hector's Jax is now able to just steamroll through the game easily. And if you want to see how he does that, then you can always check out the full game commentary here. One super important thing though, we want to point out before we go, is that not a single time did we hindsight analyze this game. It'd be easy as a challenger player to just mechanically outplay everyone into a comeback and then just say, oh, I totally knew that would happen. But Hector literally spent the entire game talking about what he couldn't do, and then adapting to the horrible circumstances he was dealt. I mean, he even predicted when and how his opponents would throw their leads into him. This is because gold ELO players are obviously going to make easy to exploit mistakes that you'll see nearly every single one of your games. If you keep your cool when you're losing, and you play patiently and unfairly, then even you can make the most hopeless of games an easy comeback. And remember, you can watch the full game in its entirety with Hector's commentary right away at skillcapped.com with the discount link below. On top of that, definitely check out Hector's special course he made, which gives you the very best insights for how to carry a losing team as a top laner. Thank you for watching, and we'll catch you next time.